Hi guys, Levi here. I saw this graphic and I thought I'd make a video about it. Um, Someone that my wife and I really like, that I've been into for a lot of years for content, is I don't know that she's Christian, but it's just very, very relationally practical and very, at least in many ways, functional and healthy. Um, uh, Her content is. And her name is Allison Armstrong. If you haven't heard of her, if you're at all interested in growing in your ability to relate better to your spouse or to the opposite sex, or just to understand how men and women work, I would highly recommend her content. So, hey, babe, would you mind closing the door? Thanks, babe. Um, So, uh, so I just read this and I was like, oh, I want to make a video about that. Men and women, both men and women spend countless hours, dollars, and calories that will never come back to them because they spend them providing for the people in their lives the things they are sure those people need and want without asking. Um, I'm proposing a new deal: do ask and do tell. Learn how to ask, when to ask, and stop taking it personally when how you naturally do this doesn't work. And this reminds me of a book title that goes, "I'm not crazy, I'm just not you." And so um, there's something called the curse of knowledge, and the curse of knowledge is when somebody learns something new and forgets that they didn't know it. That there was a point in time where they didn't know that. And so they'll treat and interact with other people as if they know it or understand it when they don't. And so they don't give people the same, like, kind of kindness or grace uh, in the interaction because they assume that the other person knows something that they don't, and they themselves forget that they didn't know it at one point, and they needed to be taught that principle. And so that's what this reminds me of because um, men and women are different, um, which is putting it lightly. Uh, there are men and women are similar in a lot of ways, but they are different in very, very many ways. God created them to be different. God created men and women to do different things, generally speaking. Um, and so, uh, yeah, so I mean, there's the idea that the kind of feminist idea, like this is like an older wave of feminism that talks about women can do what men do. There is some truth to that, but there's some like lies to that, and um, and there are some things that like men can do things that women can do, but there's some things that, but there's just simply at a fundamental and general level differences between men and women. So those are like like there's a category of humanity, and then there's a category of categories of men and women. So two uh, the probably the two biggest categories of humans. Um, but then oftentimes what happens, and I've made this mistake, but oftentimes what happens is people relate to others like they would relate to themselves. Um, so they relate to others the way they would relate to themselves. And then another thing that they do is people fear. Um, uh, Now, it's not something that anyone particularly enjoys, except for maybe a sadomasochist, but people tend to avoid pain. And one of the ways that people tend to avoid pain is, excuse me, one of the ways that people tend to avoid pain is by practicing invulnerability. So they don't tell their secrets. They don't say how they really think, how they really feel, what they actually like, what they actually don't like, which is a form of boundary. Like if I say, I don't like it when you tell me what I should do, that's a language that we use to like set a boundary. Um, so there are deep, fundamental, pervasive differences between me and you and other people. Other people, um, yes, generally people need love. Generally, people need attention, even introverts to some extent. Um, People need food and water, so they need these general things. They need validation for their thoughts and feelings and opinions. And especially for men, men need validation for their opinions. I think women probably need some validation too, but it's just not as pronounced. It's not as high in the hierarchy of, like, I guess we could say needs for women, whereas it's very high for men. Um, but essentially, like, the argument that I'm putting forward is that people are different, and people aren't merely shallowly different. People are deeply different. And this is something like I'm a very technical person. Um, I'm an intelligent person. I'm a highly technical person. Um, and so when I've interacted with people in my life, I like intuitively and in some sense in my imagination, I see. I mean, not necessarily literally, but I see like 1,000 possibilities for how to answer and interact with people in different situations. And um, and I've gradually, tactically, perhaps strategically, learned how to interact with people in ways that they feel comfortable with, um, because I want to meet people where they're at, and because I know that people are different from me, and um, because I'm comfortable with certain kinds of interactions that other people are very uncomfortable with. I like directness, um, even some degree of bluntness, but it depends on the area. But I really appreciate kind directness, kind truth telling, not just blunt truth telling, because that truth without kindness kills, essentially. But so in my life, uh, I'm the person who I don't live analogously. Um, I live principally, and so most people live analogously. And what does that mean? Essentially, and it's not even necessarily conscious, although I mean to some degree it might be. But when people live analogously, they generally look at the stories that other people are living and then copy those stories, like and live out the same story. So like someone who lives analogously might, almost unthinkingly, they go to school, maybe they go to college, they meet someone in college, they get married, they have kids, they have a career for 40 years, they 40, 50 years, they retire, um, they live maybe 10, 20 years after that, and they die. Um, and I'm not saying I live greatly differently from that. My life looks kind of similar to that, um, but I make, at least I try to make decisions based on, um, critical thinking and first principles, and and then like primarily like what feeds me and my decision making is my intimate relationship with God, my granular, low secrets relationship with God. And anyways, so those are uh, two ways that people, two general ways that people live. Most people live analogously, uh, and there is a smaller subset of the population, maybe 10 or less percent of the population, at least in the American context, that thinks critically about their lives and decisions and wants to, and it has an innate curiosity, wants to know the why behind why things happen. And I just have, like, glory to God, I happen to be one of those people. I'm very, very curious. I want to know why everything. And I grew up taking things relatively literally, and I still have relative preference for the literal. But thank God I have enough of an intuition and or like intelligence to where I can depart from the literal and go into the metaphorical and the non-literal and humor and sarcasm and all that. But the reason I'm telling you all this is um, I'm telling you uh, why you should believe me, essentially. Not to tell you you should, or like an argument from authority or something like that. But I'm just saying, I've studied people. I've looked at multiple of the like Myers Briggs or MTBI, depending on your vernacular personality types. I looked at Enneagram. I looked at Strengths Finder. I've looked at NPSP 25, which tangentially really helped my wife and I when we went through it, comparing and or contrasting our NPSP 25 psychometric assessment results. That we did that before we were married, and so that really helped us find where we aligned on our values and or like where we didn't, because there are differences. But the point is there are granular, um, molecular differences, metaphorically speaking, um, between people. And so, coming back to the idea of a lot of people live analogously, and a lot of people live fearfully, or in some, or at a different, from a different perspective, avoiding vulnerability. And so, avoiding vulnerability, um, there are of course contexts where it's just not safe to be you, not safe to share genuinely what you think or feel. But as an adult, because you can choose your context, you can choose who you associate with. It behooves adults. It behooves you and me and all the people to be as authentic and forthright as possible, generally speaking. Uh, so that includes the workplace, that includes personal lives. A principle that my wife and I live by is you're only as sick as your secrets. I learned that in Codependence Anonymous, where I spent like off and on for 12 years. And excuse me, and where I they helped me get just a lot healthier. And so, because people live um, with a fear of vulnerability, which comes down to a fear of getting hurt or injured emotionally, and then like if you they dive way down deep, leads to actually the fear of death is what that's linked to fundamentally. Um, because especially if a person doesn't know Jesus as their Lord and Savior, even if they're not highly conscious of it, they're going to have a fear of death. What I believe that is just a fear of going to hell, and and so that's like way down deep in most people is like subconscious. That's down there, and so that's how they tend to live. If you do have a relationship with God or Jesus, you do know the person of the truth, like personally, then you can find the security necessary to tell your secrets to other people. And even though you know that getting hurt or rejected by those around you is possible, it doesn't. Uh, the closer you are to Jesus in a very like relational, open sense, listening to what Jesus has to say, and telling Jesus what you're going through, what you're struggling with, what your hopes and dreams are, what your shameful secrets are, what your positive and dream secrets are, etc., 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 the more secure you are to be who you are, um, to other people. Because when you're that vulnerable with God, with Father, Jesus, Holy Ghost, um, uh, then their light comes into you, and in some sense, you become integrated with God, or in some sense, one with God, which Scripture or Jesus more or less kind of speaks to. Because one of the prayers that Jesus prayed was, Father, let them be one with me as I am one with you. And so that's one of the fundamental things that God wills, is that you be one with Him. He wants human intimacy. He wants relationship. That's a fundamental, clear message and story that is throughout the Bible, from the beginning, God walking with Adam in the garden, to the end, God the Father, I think, in Revelations 21, moves to earth. But anyways, I digress. All that to say that when people live invulnerably, they don't risk vulnerability. And so what does that look like as it pertains into what I've read you here, with both men and women spend countless hours, dollars, and calories that will never come back to them, because they spend them providing for the people in their lives the things they are sure those people need and want, without asking. Okay, that is the invulnerability part. If I ask a question of somebody, what do you want, what do you need, how can I meet your needs or wants, or what can I do for you, in a non-codependent way, but just in a supportive, relational manner. If I ask that question, that's risking rejection, that's risking another negative response. Not asking is a very, in my opinion, dysfunctional, unhealthy approach to relationships. It's very, very unhealthy. It's not. This is a general thing. It's not to say you can't surprise people with birthday gifts or something like that. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about as a matter of course, especially like in a marriage, but also like friendships, or family relationships. People do this all the time. They try to meet the needs of others without asking. They try to meet the needs of others, or the wants of others, without asking if those are genuine wants and needs of the person. So when invulnerability is a part of the mix, and I don't ask, then essentially what I'm doing is I'm projecting my story, my personal set of wants and needs onto another person, which may match in some cases, but it's not going to match in others, because remember, other people are not the same as you. Even if somebody has the same personality type as you, they are still going to have a very different lived experience. They're going to have their own intrapersonal. So interpersonal is between people. Intrapersonal is between me and myself. People are going to have their own systems, their own methods, their own ways of meeting needs and desires. And so maybe the need that you want to meet for somebody is a need that they've already met for themselves, and they don't need you to do that. And furthermore, if you try to meet a need for somebody else that they don't have, and specifically that you haven't asked if you can meet that need or want, again, I'm just talking in generalities, that can be violative of their autonomy and their boundaries, and it can be a waste of time, honestly. So, So I'll give you for instance in my marriage, my wife one of my wife's love languages is quality time. Another is affection. So those are probably two of her highest love languages. Um, and how did I discover this? Well, we talked about like I when we were dating, um, and before we got married. Part of the way I lead in relationship is by um, seeking authentic interactions. And again, going back to that principle, you're only as sick as your secrets. That's not only true of you as a person, that's also true of your marriage, your friendships, your relationships. The more secrets that are being kept, the secrets that need to be shared relative to the kind of commitment and kind of relationship there is. Um, like my wife and God can know like my deepest dreams and or fears. Uh, that's not necessarily going to be something I would want to be open about to a stranger. It's just like a completely different commitment level. So, but in our relationship, the way I led and uh, and arguably like the way that God taught me to conduct my relationships is secret, radical secret minimization. And um, and so anyways, so like in the course of that, I discovered her love languages. I think before we got married, certainly after we got married, because my wife and I dated over primarily over Facebook Messenger. We didn't have any physical contact until the day before we got married when I picked her up at San Francisco Airport, San Francisco International. And that was the first time we'd seen each other in person, held hands, hugged, etc. And she didn't realize that she had a need for affection, that was one of her love languages, but we discovered that. And so if I but let's say that I didn't do that. Let's say that I was in the habit of living invulnerably. That means like not sharing my secrets and not asking for her secrets from the shallow to the deep. Let's say I didn't do that. Let's say that like so my uh, some of my top love languages are quality time and words of affirmation. Um, and to a lesser degree the other love languages. But let's just pretend that my one of my love languages was um, giving gifts. So that's not one of my pride. It's one of my love languages, but it's not a primary one at all. It's like maybe fourth place or something like that out of the five. But let's say that I just assumed that the way that I receive love, since my love language is in this pretend scenario is gifts, giving or receiving gifts, and I would feel loved by receiving gifts, like thoughtful gifts. And it's a totally valid love language. It's not mine, but let's pretend it is. Let's say that I just started giving her gifts without asking for her love languages. It's not in her top two, at very least, maybe not the top three of her love languages. So I might be giving her gifts. I might be expending this effort, money, time, thought, thinking that, like, if I want her to feel loved, I need to give her gifts. And let's just say that I did that, and my wife is, my wife has in this pretend scenario, my wife has the same love languages as she does now. She's not going to feel, she's going to be able to tell that that's what I intend is for her to feel loved. But since that's not one of her primary love languages, she's not really going to feel that love. So I'm not going to be, because I'm practicing invulnerability, because I didn't ask, like Alison Armstrong says, they are sure those people need and want without asking. I'm proposing a new deal: do ask and do tell. But let's say that I didn't ask, and so I try to love my wife by giving her gifts. thoughtful, valuable gifts that I would feel loved by, but she doesn't feel loved. She doesn't receive love that way. That's not her love language. So that's like just one area that people can be very different and receive love and or respect or appreciation very differently. Um, but since my wife and I practice secret minimization between us, and arguably the only people who know more about us, the only person who knows more about us is God, Father, Jesus, Holy Ghost. Um, I do speak to her in her love language. I'm not largely, I mean, I like gifts, they're nice. I do feel some amount of love from them, but it's certainly not my primary love language. And since I've discovered her primary love language is quality time, or another way to put quality time is undivided attention. Um, and that's one of my love languages, so I understand it like pretty well. And then another one of her love languages is affection. Then I can hold my wife, I can hold her hand, we can snuggle, um, and I know that that will contribute love to her. That's what we've learned. We've openly discussed um, throwing invulnerability to the side, because the problem with invulnerability is even if I want to show, even if I want to contribute love or respect, value to another person, but I practice invulnerability, invulnerability is a two-way street. So if I practice invulnerability, not only am I not communicating what I genuinely and authentically want and need, I'm also not asking other people, my wife, my family, um, my friends, I'm not asking them what they genuinely want and need. What would, like, if I want to contribute something to my father or mother or my sisters, I have two sisters, or if I want to contribute something to my friends, if I want them to feel loved or respected, I need to give love and respect to them in the way that they would receive it, not in the way that I would receive it. Um, and sure, that can be challenging, but is loving someone or respecting someone or valuing someone authentically about helping them feel that and contribute that to them meaningfully in a way that they feel like ministered to or healed by, or um, or something along those lines? Is that really about them, or is it about me? And so the way that I try to practice in my marriage, and hopefully with other people to varying degrees of success, I'm still a work in progress. Um, the way that I do that is by asking vulnerably, and my relationship with God gives me the security to do that, so that I know if I get rejected, or an interaction doesn't go happens to not go well, I'm going to be okay. Like, I'm not going to die. I'm not afraid of going to hell. I'm not afraid of death. Um, as far as I know, like, I don't want to die, but maybe there's some of that, but it's not. It's just not a big driver for me. For me, my main driver is my relationship with God, and then ministering to my wife, and then when we have our first son this September, which I'm super excited about, then I'll love him where he's at too. And so, do ask and do tell, as Allison Armstrong says. She says, I'm proposing a new deal. Do ask and do tell. Learn how to ask, when to ask, and stop taking it personally when how you naturally do this doesn't work. So that's to say, like, I'll put it in a kind of a nerdy linguistic way. It is incumbent upon you, if you want highly authentic relationships with people, which I'm writing a book on, which I've been writing a book on. I'm writing a book called How to Build Highly Authentic Relationships. It's incumbent upon you to learn the language. If you want to learn, if you're humble, if you want to grow personally, if you want to understand people beyond the surface, and be more intimately involved with people, at least the people who want the same thing with you. And if you're a healthy and functional person, you reciprocate. There's give and take in a relationship. And those would likely, if you're that kind of person or you want to be that kind of person, those are likely the kind of people that you would seek out. And if you're in a relationship with someone who doesn't materially reciprocate in a way that you feel loved and honored by, either tell them about that or leave a relationship. In my opinion, of course, I can be wrong. Um, but she's saying, I'm proposing a new deal. Do ask and do tell. Learn how to ask, when to ask. So definitely how to ask, when to ask is important. I would argue the most important thing is asking at all. Like, are you asking? Like, in my relationship with my wife, arguably I ask. At least I hope I do. So the smile on her face that she gives me tells me that her needs for love and respect are getting met, and praise God for that. So I love you. You're amazing. Ask. Are you asking? Are you asking people what, I mean, you can use your own vernacular for that, but are you asking, what do you want, what do you need to your spouse, to your friends, to the people that you want to contribute to? Are you asking that question? And I'm pushing this point. I mean, there's different reasons, but one of the reasons I want to press this point, are you asking, is something like, many people struggle with loneliness and they don't understand why. Now, part of that can be spiritual, some kind of oppression. But a lot of times I think people struggle with loneliness because the relationships that they're in are not very real. And they're not very connected or attached. And what do I mean by that? In order for a relationship to be real, it needs to be built on many, many, many dozens or even hundreds or thousands of small connections based on vulnerability, or speaking the truth kindly about oneself and asking for the truth kindly from your interlocutor, from another person, from your spouse, from your child. When you do that, when you ask, the fundamental question is, how can I love you? How can I contribute love and meaning and value to you, respect to you? What are the ways that I can do that? When you ask, and when you put aside insecurity and invulnerability, and you actually say, hey, this is when you ask for that from other people for their secrets, and you communicate yours. When you say, hey, when you do this behavior, I don't like it. Can you please stop? Or, hey, when you rub my shoulders, I feel really loved when you do that. So when your spouse, when somebody else hits the spot for you, your love language or your respect language, your appreciation language, your honor language, when they hit the spot, tell them that they've hit the spot. Tell them, hey, when you do that, when you say that, I feel respected. When you say that, I feel loved, I feel valued, I feel honored. This is part of the way that, to more or less a degree, that my wife and I relate to each other. When I win with her, she tells me that I'm winning. She regularly, just because she's awesome, brags about the things that I do on social media, and tells me as well, and is very encouraging towards me. And I try to be encouraging towards her, and not only in who she is and how she conducts herself, but if she does something that I feel respected by or disrespected by, I try to kindly let her know, so that she can do, like, the thing is I am responsible and you are responsible to teach other people how to relate to you successfully in a way that you feel loved and respected and honored and valued by. Um, it's so strange to me when, like, I was a teacher for maybe 7 years or over 7 years, and it was so interesting to me, especially when I was a professor. People would, uh, like, I remember this one teacher, lecturer, professor specifically who was like, um, he was worried that his students wouldn't be able to pass their final or wouldn't be able to do well on their final. And it's like, no, you're the one responsible to teach them what is the criteria or the things that need to be done that the students need to do so that they can get a good grade. You are the one responsible for doing that and for training them in that. And it's not about control, it's not about speaking down to people or up to people or anything of that sort. It's, I want good for you, and I'm going to, now, like, and I'm, I guess, going to assume, assumptions are usually dangerous, but I'm going to trust you, and part of trust is believing that the other person wants the best. And so, like, I'm going to, having interacted with my wife, I know she wants the best for me. Not only does she want the best for me, she's also smart enough to make it happen and has the resources to make it happen. So I tell her, like, in kindly, I do my best. Sometimes I make mistakes, but I tell her, please relate to me this way. Please don't relate to me that way. I feel disrespected, unappreciated, or unvalued, or something along those lines. If you do this thing or these things, or you speak to me that way, but if you speak to me this way, or interact with me this way, or rub my shoulders, or whatever it is, I feel loved or valued or honored by that, whatever the feeling is. And when authenticity, when vulnerability is practiced by telling your secrets and asking other people for their secrets appropriately relative to the commitment level of the relationship, then when you understand, hey, maybe with your spouse, maybe their love language is acts of service, and you've been trying to give them affection, but that's not really, maybe that's not their love language. But if you go to them and you say, hey, like, here's 5 love languages, and you can look this up on the internet. Here's 5 love languages: acts of service, gifts, quality time, words of affirmation, and you know the next one. Anyways, there's like 5 love languages. If you ask them, huh? Touch, affection, maybe. If you ask them, if you go, hey, here's 5 love languages. Which one or two do you think are your top? And then hopefully they'll tell you. And you could say to them, like, hey, I want you to feel loved by and respected by what I do, and I want to contribute love to you, because love is a verb. Feelings come second, actions come first, more or less. So if you find out their love language and you go, oh, okay, well, can I love you like that? Can I? And so maybe your spouse's acts of service. You're like, hey, like, I want her to feel love, or I want him to feel loved. I'm gonna do maybe one of their chores for them, or you might even ask, like, how can I show that to you in a way that you would like, that you would feel loved or honored or respected. When you do that, and then you follow through on that intention and love them, in this instance, with an act of service, like doing the dishes or taking out the garbage or washing the car or whatever it is, that would speak to that need for love for them, because there was no invulnerability and it was more vulnerable, then that act connects emotionally and in reality in the relationship. And when that need and that desire in your spouse or in your friend or in your family member, when you meet that desire after having asked, and preferably specifically, at least, like I'm a more specific person, some people are more general, um, and you meet that need for love or honor or respect or value, that's a genuine connection. That's a genuine connection. And because when you ask and you get a good answer back, now you know where the goalposts are. Now you know what to aim at. Now you're getting a lay of the land. Now you know where the bullseye is on the dartboard of your interlocutor's heart. Um, and when you relate on a heart level, vulnerably, relative to the level of commitment in the relationship, um, that's an authentic relationship because it's based on what's kind and true. Because if it's not true, if you try to love your spouse with acts of service, but their top love language that they would like to receive and they have a need for love in is affection, it's not going to hit the target. It's going to be off target. But when you love them in the language that they have, or in some other area of life, maybe it's respect or honor or validation. And so part of the point is ask so that you can figure out how to and increase your level of shrewdness. Shrewdness is um, uh, knowing how things work and working with them at the right time to achieve a desired outcome. That is shrewdness, essentially, at least from my perspective and what I've read. And so when you increase your shrewdness practically, discreetly, actionably, and articulately, like with words, using statements and questions, um, and communicating boundaries and radical secret reduction with another person, and with other people generally, um, then the connections built between you and other people are authentic, they're real, they're based on what's true, what actually will work, and that, as I mentioned before about loneliness, reduces feelings of loneliness. It dissipates them. Because when you tell the truth to someone who is worthy of trust, an abuser isn't worthy of trust, they're an abuser. Or someone who just, or a psychopath in a more extreme example, but or someone who just doesn't want to reciprocate. But if you communicate genuinely and authentically and kindly, what you actually want, what you actually need, and you ask your interlocutor what they actually want, what they actually need, and you let down your walls, and then you can actually receive the love you need, and the respect you need, and the honor you need. And it's not that people are to meet all those needs for you, but they do need to meet some of those needs for you, and you want to, and since people are different, which is implicitly part of the message of this Alison Armstrong post, since people are very, very different, when you ask genuinely and kindly what other people want to need and you communicate that as well, you begin to learn the language of other people, the languages of other people, and you begin to be able to meet them where they're at. And then if you practice that with generosity based on your relationship with Father Jesus Holy Ghost, who you are also practicing authenticity with and radical reduction of secrets between you and him, then you become very attractive. You have a certain air of humility, a certain air of purposeful, maybe even virtuous intelligence, and you become attractive to people who resonate with you. They don't need to be the same as you. Like one form of love that I would argue is admiration or resonance. When I have that facet of action, if I see someone who's like a master plumber or construction worker or professor or whatever, maybe I don't have that in common with them, but I have this admiration and like the kind of person that they are, if they're a person of character or truth, humor, etc. uh, that becomes attractive. So it's this kind of like frequency or frequencies when you are being authentic, when you're asking what people genuinely want to need and you are communicating the same, uh, that is below the surface. It's not merely analogous living in some sense, it's more principled and deeper than that. And it's not that the point is to be deep, the point is to live truthfully, because when you live truthfully, that is a signal that attracts who and what you are to you. Those kinds of good people that you would, good, functional, and healthy people that you would want to be with, um, and that you would want to be with, and they would want to be with you. It's mutual. That's how my wife and I met. I was in a Facebook revivalist Christian singles group. I posted on where on there, um, um, based on like things that I had learned and kind of informing people or maybe answering their questions, but trying to offer them like genuine value. And like women tend to marry men who are towards the top or at the top of dominance hierarchies, and because we live in a world of hierarchies and it's unavoidable, and some people are just genuinely more competent than others, but everybody's on a journey. And anyways, when she noticed the intelligence and maybe the healthiness, I'm not sure, in my post, yeah, that was she felt attracted to me because that resonated with her. That's the kind of person she is or wanted to be, and we've managed to almost get you completely fixed. You're, I'm kidding. Don't do Pygmalion projects, guys. A Pygmalion project is trying to make someone like you. Don't do it. Seek to understand them first. And I can say this with authority because it's what I practice. I've been practicing this for years, and I've certainly I've made a lot of mistakes. But having the technical mind, being intelligent, and seeing as I was growing up as a child and a young adult and adult, many different ways that I could respond in different situations. I studied and studied and studied and figured out between Codependence Anonymous and books that I read and people I interacted with and God, I gradually discovered the things that work, the ways of operating that work, and those that don't work. What doesn't work: invulnerability, arrogance, pride, I know best, my way or the highway. Uh, and what also doesn't work is codependence, or like a version of codependence, perhaps, where I don't ask what people want to need and try to meet and try to just assume or guess. And like what Codependence Anonymous taught me is that assumptions and expectations are dangerous for my well-being. Again, generally speaking. So I wanted to go over this today. um, uh, I wanted to go over this today because this is such an important idea to understand. The idea of asking questions, practicing vulnerability, and saying what I actually want and what I actually need, and asking other people what they actually want to need. This kind of communication, again, generally speaking, and when done with kindness, builds relationships and connections, and will make the world a better place if you practice it. Maybe you already are. Maybe this is a refresher for you, but I wanted to share it today. So thank you for your attention. Please check out, let's see if I can pull it up here. Please check out my books and my wife's books. They're shot through with, in different ways, these kinds of ideas, mainly focused on our one of my favorite quotes. It's a Jewish culture quote, is what I've learned. Go far, stay long, see deep. And so for them, it's geographic, and for me, to a large extent, it's geographic, but it's also psychological, spiritual, philosophical, etc. Um, but check out our books if you want to be entertained, if you want to grow personally, if you want to just become more successful in life and live a more meaningful life. That's part of what we're putting in this book because we want your lives to be heaven on earth, but not our version of heaven on earth, your version based on the kind of person you are, because we want you to find your voice. Anyways, please subscribe and like and leave a comment, any questions you might have. And it's been great to have you. Thank you so much for your time. And we'll see you next time. Bye bye.